morning, everyone. Welcome to our Future Fit Improving Business Efficiencies workshop. My name is Anna Christie. I'm the CEO at the Sussex Chamber of Commerce. So this is the third in a series of workshops that we have run. All of the workshops are available or will be available after today on YouTube or through the Sussex Chamber website. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Wealdon District Council and Locate East Sussex, who have made this webinar possible and the whole Future Fit series possible. Before I introduce our speakers today, I would like to welcome Philip Johnson from Locate East Sussex, who would like to say a few words.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. I shall keep it very brief, but we at Locate East Sussex have been delighted to support this particular programme of webinars along with our co-sponsors at Wealdon District Council. Very grateful to Anna and her team at Sussex Chamber for all of the work that they've put in to make these things happen. And I think really my message would be that we are here to help, support, discuss, advise, and even just have a conversation with people during this challenging time. Although as I look at everything that's happening in the States at the moment, maybe it's not quite as challenging here as it is over there, with the rather frightening thought that President Trump got more votes this time around than he did last time. But on that maybe topical note, thanks everyone for attending, and thanks everyone for putting on what I'm sure will be a really, really worthwhile event today. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much, Philip. This workshop will talk about well-being and health. The last few months have been very, very challenging for a lot of people, and mental health and well-being has been one of the biggest issues and the biggest concerns, especially with the first lockdown and now entering a second lockdown. A lot of businesses are not equipped to know how to deal with mental health issues, whether it's personally or even through how to manage and help their own staff and their team. And working remotely can cause other challenges as well. So today we are joined by two experts that are going to give their perspectives on well-being. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Paul Roskilly from the Wellbeing and Performance Company. So following 30 years policing experience and 6 years in further education, preparing young people for careers in the public sector, Paul has developed a keen interest in the impact mental health is having on individuals and organisations. He is the director of the Wellbeing and Performance Company, whose focus is supporting businesses and organisations with improving the well-being of their staff, resulting in happier, valued, engaged and productive workforces. Please welcome Paul. Thank you.
Right, okay, from start. Okay, that's me, sorry about that. I'm a 62-year-old technophobe, and so coming into a virtual conference has been quite a scary experience for me. So thanks for the introduction, Anna. Just today, I'd like to quickly go over what I'm hoping to talk about. I was originally going to talk about a business case for looking after people's mental health, and it's been so much talked about, certainly through lockdown. I made a decision to talk about my own mental health journey and to sort of share with you why I'm doing what I do now. And it's probably one of the first times I've done this publicly. It's taken me probably 30 years to come to terms with doing that. So bear with me, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. But what I'm hoping you're going to take out of this is that how my journey maybe relates to yourself and how you are with your staff, family and friends, and also to make you think about how that may cost your businesses. Okay, so I'm 62 years old. I was born in a little village in Kent, and I was brought up by two very loving parents, and I had an idyllic childhood. I was a really lucky boy, and my parents were working class. My dad was a carpenter. I was never pushed academically, but I was always supported, and any of my successes were celebrated. And I don't think I was ever told that I couldn't do anything, which was great. And so I'm very fortunate for that. And with my children, I've tried to have a similar sort of ethos with them. But, and whether, time will tell whether that's been successful. 1977, I joined Sussex Police. I had no real career ambitions, and I think I probably got into it accidentally. I got posted to Brighton, which was quite scary for an 18-year-old who had been brought up in a small village all his life. I did my probation, and then at that time, the mid to late 70s, I got posted to Gatwick Airport as a 21-year-old man, and I was given a gun. I'd never picked up a gun in my life. I'd never had any interest in it, and but in those days, terrorism was becoming more prevalent within our society, and the airport needed to be patrolled with an armed response. So I went through basic training with firearms training, and it turned out that I was sort of quite good at it, and I really understood the tactics and surrounding that sort of role. And I spent 20 of my 30 years service working within the firearms world as basically as a firearms officer, as a responder. We used to do close protection. I was on the full-time team, and then I became an instructor, so I used to teach people to do it as well. Just by the nature of the job, it's very difficult for it not to be a macho role. It was a very masculine area to work in. Very few women carried a gun in those days, and it was an environment where we used to take the mickey out of each other a lot. We didn't really understand mental health, poor mental health, and certainly we were fairly impatient with people that talked about having stress and things like that. Bearing in mind, we're now back in the late 70s, early 80s. Through my career, and I'm not going to go into loads of details about some of the things I did and seen, but through my career, I obviously witnessed quite a few. I was involved in some serious incidents. I witnessed some fairly terrible things. I was involved in the Brighton bomb back in 1984. I was present there, and several other incidents over the intervening years. And one in particular had quite a major impact on my own mental health, and that was in the late 90s. And as much as I'd love to tell you the story, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details now on that, but actually it had quite an effect on me. And what actually happened is I started to feel I was unable to concentrate. I became quite angry and argumentative. I'm quite a laid-back sort of guy, and I'm very. I like to look at the positive things in life, but I just became quite obnoxious, really, angry, argumentative, and then I started having panic attacks, which was quite a major shock to me, because that's not the sort of thing men like I did, and we certainly didn't talk about it. Now, Sussex Police at the time were very supportive. I was given some help. I had some help with my mental health. I was diagnosed a little bit later on with PTSD, and probably over the over the last 20 years or so, I've had one or two. I then had the odd panic attack and suffer with sort of probably mild depression is the best way to describe it. As I say, I was supported by Sussex Police. I had to come off the team for a while. I wasn't allowed to carry a gun, but when I was considered to be better by the experts, the organisation allowed me to return to my duties, which was great. And it's the first time where the stigma of mental health was put to the test in my life. There were probably senior officers there that probably didn't want to give me a gun again. And I don't wish to sound flippant when I'm saying things like that, but actually, it was just part of my life. It was something I was used to doing, and but they did welcome me back into the team, and I spent another 2 or 3 years on the team, just on operational duties. I then started having problems with my health, and I was shooting on the range one day, and my hand seized up. I couldn't actually pull the trigger when I was practicing, which is not an ideal for the role I was performing. And I then had to go through quite a long process of diagnostic tests and such like. And about 18 months later, I was diagnosed with a very posh sounding illness called multifocal motor neuropathy. And it's basically a disease of the nervous system. Now, I would never be able to say that as a result of my initial breakdown and my PTSD that this illness has come along, but it's quite interesting that I've got a neurological illness now that isn't curable, but I can get treatment. And so for the last 16 years, I've been receiving treatment every 8 weeks in hospital, which has kept the illness at bay. So I'm 16 years older. I haven't deteriorated further apart from my age, unfortunately. We'll come to it a little bit later on, but it was the loss of control I had during that time and during my initial breakdown that was my big issue. I couldn't control my life, and I, as a police officer, you spend your time not only controlling your life, you control other people's lives as well to a certain degree. And people have always done what I tell them to do, and they respond to me. The other thing I'd like to mention at that stage, at this time, is as a police officer, you spend a lot of time judging people and making assessments on them based around what you're looking at and what you're seeing, not just about what you're hearing and things like that. And that's quite a difficult thing to actually, as you change, as your life changes, not being judgmental is quite a difficult thing to change. Anyway, I was put on light duties for 3 years. I went into a desk job, mainly planning events and disaster management and things like that. And then I retired in 2007. A year or so later, I worked for Eastbourne Borough Council, funny enough, as an emergency planning officer. And then I went into education, working at Sussex Downs College. And these were all young people that were looking to join the emergency services or the military. It was a really happy 6 years of my life at the college. I became very aware of young people's mental health issues, how they were coping with the stresses of their life in the 2000s, in the year 2000s now. And although I was really considerate of their feelings, I didn't really have the tools at that time to be as supportive looking back as I would have liked to have been. But I did create a good relationship with a lot of those students, and I still see and hear from quite a few of them even now, although I left the college in 2014. But that was a really important time of my life for me to change and start growing up. Bit late in your late 40s, early 50s. In 2017, I bumped into a friend who was a Samaritan, and I just found it chatting to her. I realised obviously we were aware of the important role they did, but I didn't really understand what the Samaritans did, and I became a volunteer. And I'm still a volunteer, and I'm now part of the training team within the Eastbourne Samaritan group. And that's been a very humbling experience for me, and it's been a very strong period of growth for myself as well, because I realised that, believe it or not, I can't fix everything, and I can't rescue people and things like that, but I can listen to them and be supportive. So the Samaritans have become a huge part of my life, and probably me growing up a bit more over the last few years. And out of that, the Wellbeing and Performance Company, which was formed, which we've already touched on. We ran an event this time last year in Eastbourne, a wellbeing event, and a friend of mine turned up at it, a guy called Ian Pickard, who works in the building industry, and he's a health and safety inspector. And he came along to our event because he'd become really interested in the amount of men that were committing suicide within the building industry. And it's 2 men a day who work in the building industry are actually killing themselves. It's a horrendous statistic. And myself and Ian also had a friend who committed suicide about a few weeks prior to that event, which was a real shock to us, and it was a real shock to the wider community of Eastbourne, really. And as a result of that, we decided to start up a man's support group. So in February this year, myself and Ian started up a support group called Mankind. For the ladies present, I'm sorry, but it is for the men. 75% of suicides are committed by men. We are rubbish at talking to each other. And so we started this little group up in a little cafe called Cafe 32 in Eastbourne. We had 2 meetings and got locked down. We've continued on Zoom. which for a couple of old boys to try and manage that has been quite interesting for us. But we've been running evening meetings every Wednesday since lockdown, and we've got a growing bunch of men joining us, and it's become quite an important part of my life. But so that's a very quick whistle stop tour of my mental health journey and career to now. Okay, now these are the lessons. I'm going to rattle through these, and this is the bit that hopefully I've learned from, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. First thing is, we are not immune. A mental health episode can happen to anyone, and it's probably we've had 6-7 months of the whole mental health issue and our own personal mental health being played out within the media and within ourselves. And it's obviously there are so many people out there, famous and not so famous, that are dealing with their own mental health, and which is really encouraging from a point of view that we're now able to talk about it. But the bottom line is, we're all capable and we're all liable to suffer at some stage with some poor mental health. So that's the first lesson that I learned quite early on, because I thought I was immune to this sort of thing. It's not weak to speak. When I first got ill with my mental health, a lot of the people that I worked with thought I was brave because I had to talk out. I had to talk with them about how I was feeling, and at the time when I was feeling particularly weak and particularly vulnerable, the people around me were actually saying that I was strong and they were proud of me, which I found really strange. I've since found out that several people that were involved in the incident that actually was the catalyst of my breakdown also had some psychological help, and none of us have really spoken about that with each other until more recently, which is 20 odd years later, which is sad. But it's not weak to speak out, and by sharing with people, we're finding that we can then be more supportive of each other. Focusing on the things you control. I also touched on that. When I'm not in control of my life, that's when I start feeling vulnerable. That's when anxiety kicks in, and that's when we start feeling a bit sad and a bit depressed about ourselves. And so it's important focusing on what you can control. And I'm sure Sarah is going to go into this in a lot more detail later on, but you can control what you look at, you can control what you put inside your body, you can control how you exercise and things like that. And try not to focus on the things that you can't control. And I must admit, building up to this presentation, I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about the things that I've got no control over, and just getting a little bit nervous about today. And we probably spend too much time, up to 80% of our time, we spend in that area of not being in control. So focus on the things you can control. Ask how someone's feeling. We've all got friends, and this ladies, you tend to be a lot more. You tend to be much better about talking about your feelings and sharing with your friends and things like that. Men, we tend to be a bit more reserved. So we're quite happy to take our first answer. How you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. Good. And then we start talking about the football and things like that. Look at how people are behaving. Sometimes their body language is telling you something different to what's coming out of their mouth. Don't accept that first answer. The Time to Change organisation did this campaign last year, and I think it's just brilliant. Just follow up any questions. If you're not feeling that they've answered necessarily truthfully, make a follow-up question. You don't seem yourself. You say you're okay, but I've not seen you lately. You've not been returning my calls. Just maybe challenge them a little bit, and don't be scared to do that. It's that second question that can quite often get the truth. This is my Samaritans plug. I'm going to do it. Listen, don't fix. This has been the hardest part of my journey. I can always work out what people need to do for themselves, but actually that's not really that important. And just being able to listen. And I've taken some wonderful calls at Samaritans where I've just sat there and just talked about how their feelings are, and you can hear someone's voice change as they've just been able to offload, and someone's listening without judging. We're not here to fix. The other thing I'd like to point out at this stage, most people think you've got to be right at the point where you're thinking of taking your own life before you call the Samaritans. That's not the case. 20% of our calls, people are sort of share that they're having suicidal thoughts or they've got a plan to actually take their own life. But the majority of calls is because people are lonely, because they're sad, because they're just waking up in the middle of the night and they're not really sure what the next that day is going to hold. I take calls from people at 4 a.m. because they've got a meeting with their boss, and they're really scared about the results of that meeting. So if you go away with anything today, the Samaritans are there 24/7. Please use them if you just need a little bit of support at a time when you're feeling vulnerable. You don't have to be right at that bad stage. Okay, with regards to the Wellbeing and Performance Company, the diagram on the left is about what mental illness looks like. You relate that to the people that you have working with you, and it's obviously difficult to keep an eye on this at the moment with people working remotely, but you need to be sort of aware of these things. Hibernating in bed, duvet days that people have, people cancelling plans. Either you or some of your staff cancel plans at the last minute. That may be because they've got other things more important to do, but it might be that they're not really in a position to cope with the plan that they had. Meltdowns are slightly more obvious with regards to how people are feeling. Believing they're a burden. We've got guys on my Mankind group that they don't turn up on the days when they're feeling really down because they don't want to burden the rest of us, and it's actually, and getting them to understand that actually that's the time when they need to be joining us is really important. Emotional distance, isolating themselves, all of those things are signs that you may or may not be coping too well with your day, with your life at the time. As a company, we run mental health first aid courses. I'm now a mental health first aid instructor. We do leadership and team development, and we're now developing redundancy and career support and things like that. But that's a little bit about us. And then the last lesson is men will talk about their feelings if they feel safe, supported, and not judged. The caveat to that, all people will talk about their feelings, whether it's men or women. I do focus on the men because of the suicide rates and things like that. And I just wanted to share that that's our Facebook site. That's where we meet every evening, and that's the meeting ID. And any men out there or ladies, if you have men that you feel would benefit from spending some time with us, by all means, pass that message on. And that's me. Thank you for listening. I'll take any questions if there are any, or if I don't know if there is any chats. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Paul. Truly inspirational, and I commend you for talking about your life and the impact mental health has had on different circumstances throughout your life, because I know it's not easy, and we are not immune. And talking about how we feel and everything can be very challenging, and not everybody feels comfortable with that. Yeah. And I've seen that, I've experienced it. Also with young people, I have a 19-year-old, how the exams have affected them during lockdown the last few months.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it affects everybody at different stages in their life and at different times, depending on what's happening. So it's looking out for the signs and the symptoms. Trying to see, just listening, talking, listening.
Well, one of the things that really upsets me is some of the calls I take at Samaritans are from young people, and the speed that they can go from feeling a little bit vulnerable to thinking the only way out is take some pills and things like that. And it breaks my heart really that's how quickly they can go there without support. And at the moment they're feeling vulnerable. They're exposed. They're lonely and isolated, those at university, and they haven't got the support around them, and it just scares me, But,
I have got a couple of questions that have come in on the chat. So Flavia from East Sussex County Council said, excellent presentation, and if you could share more details about Mankind support group. But I know that was on your last slide.
Yeah.
So you did share that. So I know we will share the slides as well with the recording from today. And so that was the other question about sharing the slides. So we will do that. Yeah. We will share the recording so that everybody can have a copy of the slides, any contact details and anything.
Well, just the one thing about Mankind is sometimes I'm more than happy. They don't need to just turn up unannounced if they want. I can contact them directly. So if they directly message us on Facebook, I will ring them, or Ian will, and contact them just to make them feel comfortable about coming along on that first evening, because it's quite difficult to just turn up on a screen and or into a cab. Yeah, but thank you for that. Thanks for those messages.
I don't have any raised hands at the moment, so I'd just like to ask everybody just to think about some questions that you may have, because we will open it up to Q&A session at the end. And so please put your thoughts together, raise your hands, share any best practice you have. I know that Flavia has also put a link on the chat about the Healthy Workplace programme that they've launched for East Sussex. So if you have any best practice, any advice, any podcast recommendations, mindset recommendations, anything that you may have, please do share that, because this is what this forum is all about, so that we can share that best practice and help each other and help our staff or individuals or people at home or friends as well. I'd now like to take this opportunity to welcome Sarah Jones, who's the company director at Wilderness PR. So Sarah has worked in consumer PR for over 20 years, working for mainstream brands as well as smaller companies. She specialises in growing businesses through effective communication strategies across a number of channels, including online, print, broadcast, and social media. She also specialises in influencer collaborations, content creation, and event management. A professional storyteller and media hound, Sarah prides herself on traditional media relations being at the heart of the work that she does. She runs Wilderness PR, a small agency with big thinking, from a home office in Heathfield in East Sussex, employing PR practitioner Evie Kennedy, who also works from home. Her passion is working from Sussex-based brands and businesses, getting them seen and heard and talked about, and ultimately helping them grow. Please welcome Sarah.
Hi, hello everybody. Thanks ever so much for having me on today. And thanks, Paul, for your amazing talk. I think it's really important to have this honesty and have these outlets actually for people to tap into. I must admit that I've listened to lots of different stuff over the last few years that's kind of helped shape my career direction. And one of the big outtakes, I think, from my speech today is looking at how a career that was in full control of me and how a life experience made me rethink my life and how I wanted the career to be something that I controlled. And I think from a lot of things that I hear as well, a lot of life experience actually shapes the work area of people's lives more so than you think. And one of the things I would love people to share later is podcasts, actually, because I listen to quite a few podcasts, and I'll name some podcasts later on when we're doing a podcast chat about, things that I've listened to that's kind of helped make my decisions feel like they've been the right ones for me, but also give me that confidence in a way. So I've got a few slides, but I'll talk about my career as a PR. PR is obviously a service, and it's extremely demanding. And I started off my career after doing a PR degree in London, and I was thrown completely into the deep end, working for, across my 10-year career in London, three of the biggest PR agencies at the time. And I'll be totally honest, I absolutely loved it, but it was a real roller coaster, and it was absolutely exhausting. And I was lucky enough to work for some really good brands, but what came with that was very long days, really feeling that I had to put the graft in and the long hours to kind of prove myself. At the time as well, it was kind of the noughties. There wasn't really much support with regards to mental health in companies at that time. And also I was young enough to just kind of deal with it. That's what I was expected to kind of, have that approach. And I just thought that was kind of normal. And everybody was in the same boat. And over the years, I moved to a couple of other agencies. And again, the way of working really long hours, working weekends, I just thought was kind of normal and part of what it was to be a PR. And then at the age of 29, I fell pregnant, and I had a baby. And then at the same time, I kind of reassessed what I was doing. And looking back at it now, I know I was burnt out by the whole career that I'd had up to that point. And my husband and I actually made the decision anyway to leave London, and we moved to Sussex 13 years ago. And I had 2 more babies quite quickly. And obviously my life had changed in the respect that I'd given up a career, but also I'd moved house and I'd had children. Well, my first child all in the first year. So it made me kind of have a different stage of life. And I was too busy with babies to kind of think about the career that had kind of come before then. But actually, I realised that I wanted to keep on working, and reflecting on my years up until that point, I realised that I couldn't go back into London agency life whatsoever, because it was too demanding as somebody who didn't live in London anymore and had 3 small children. So I started freelancing in PR still, consumer PR, and I was able to basically obviously control the hours that I did. And that happened for a few more years. And then I launched Wilderness PR. But my mum at the same time, just when I launched Wilderness PR, she was diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer, stage 4. And this was obviously a massive, hard-hitting thing to kind of get my head around. She sadly died 10 weeks later from diagnosis, and everything stopped in my life. My mum was working till the 10 weeks before she actually passed away. She worked really hard, and she was about to retire. And it just made me think about my life. And my mum was 62 when she passed away, so she wasn't old whatsoever. But it made me think about things, and I just thought, I can't do a career or have a career that I'm not passionate about. And for me, it was about passion, and for me, it was what was going to get me out of bed every day. I always loved PR, but I also worked out that I could do PR on my own terms that was going to make me passionate about what I did again. So on 1st of January, 4 years ago, even though my Wilderness PR had launched literally 3 days before my mum's diagnosis, obviously I didn't even give it a second thought. My mum passed away in November, and I could feel myself slipping into quite a dark time of my period of my life. And I woke up on the 1st of January and I thought the only thing that's going to get me through this is if I completely dedicate my time into fueling my passion for PR again. And that year commenced with a very different mindset and head on with regards to PR than it did a few years before back in London agency. And I must admit, it got me through a really difficult year. But also, I was very determined to absolutely love what I was going to be working on, and the passion was reignited. And it was getting me out of a very dark place. It was also giving me a really good focus that I needed, and I really began enjoying what I did again. And when you work for yourself, once you've been in that kind of hamster wheel of a corporate kind of career, you realise that there's so many benefits to being self-employed and also freelancing. And I was feeling so grateful that I was able to work in the career that I've dedicated so many years of my life to, was able to now fulfill me in so many different ways. So I took control of my career. And the beauty of that as well is I was able to kind of work with people that I really believed in, and also people and companies and brands that I was as passionate about what they were representing as they were themselves. And that kind of, for me, makes, I'm very grateful that I can wake up every day, and I'm really excited to get to my desk. But it's something that's come from me and something that I've kind of shaped. And I think passion is a big thing in the working world. I think passion gives purpose, but also I think there's a role, and I will talk about this. I've got a couple of slides on this. I think brands and companies have a real responsibility now to offer more than just a brand. It needs to be something which has purpose behind it. And that's something that I'm now quite passionate about, helping supporting brands that have purpose. And I think what's been happening over the last few months has really kind of opened consumers' eyes up to this. You know, people are more interested in the provenance behind a brand. If there's a purpose behind the brand, whether it's a sustainability purpose or message, then it's something that needs to kind of be incorporated into a business model. So passion is basically something that I'm very, very passionate about. But passion makes purpose. So for me, passion has kind of given me a new purpose with regards to my career. And I think passion generally comes before purpose, but a passion is what gets you started, and a purpose what keeps you going. Passion and purpose, I believe, leads to happiness, fulfillment, and contentment. And I really strongly believe that your working life can be part of this. I feel without purpose as a compass to guide you, your goals and action plans may not fulfill you. And I think lots of people have probably been reassessing their careers and direction, especially what's been happening with COVID. And I think it's really wonderful that a lot of people are having to work from home. And actually this whole working from home landscape is looking like it could be here to stay. And there's so many benefits to working from home. But also there are other disadvantages from working from home. And I kind of touched on a few of those later on in my talk. But I feel, I strongly believe that we've all been born with a different sense of purpose. And if you can bring self-purpose through your work, then you will definitely be working to live rather than living to work. I learned through my mum that, life is really too short, and, we need to kind of own it, live it and love it. And if you can bring that through your work, then that's, an amazing thing to be able to do. And I think if you find you're happy, then the rest will follow. And as we all know, if we're all happy, you succeed more in life. And I think happiness is the most important thing at the moment. I really do. I think if people can think about whether their business or brand has a purpose, I think having a well understood purpose has revealed a strong business benefit to purposeful brands and their companies. I also think brand purpose is also defining personal success. I think by having purpose, you are emotionally connecting to your target audiences. I've got a stat that reveals that consumers are 4 to 6 times more likely to buy from, trust, champion, and defend companies with a strong purpose. Consumers are seeking more than ever with what they choose to purchase or invest in. And I think more consumers than ever are being influenced by purpose and values. Brands, I think, need to think more than ever about the meaningfulness behind themselves, the purpose and the value that they add and bring to the table. And I think also communications nowadays needs to be consistently authentic, transparent, and meaningful as ever. Brands with purpose do better. And I think how to uncover a purpose, I think find what is your passion. And I think there hopefully will be people on here who, have a business that they're really, really passionate about. And maybe they were in a totally different career before they set up this particular business. And I'm sure that these people, were fueled by their passion to basically, launch this product or launch this company or brand. And I think there needs to be a real belly fire to be able to help you drive that business forward. And passion obviously is a massive part of that. I think there's nothing wrong with thinking big anymore. I think if we can all think big, it helps push your goals even further. Think big will give you a louder voice and also a larger reach. And we're so lucky nowadays that we've got so many different channels of communication that we can use. And social media is obviously fantastic for that. For me, I use social media a lot, obviously, to communicate what I need to be promoting, but also I use it on behalf of clients as well to push their brands and product out. But the best thing for me as well about social media is what it opens me up to and what I can then access and what I can learn from other business founders as a result of following them on their social media. I think also another key thing with purpose is just to keep your purpose really simple. Simplicity is really clear for communication, cut through, and also influencing behaviour. We are bombarded with millions and millions of messages every single day from different brands. So the clearer your purpose is and your communication message is, the better the easier you're going to get your brand out there. I think also when you bring purpose through your business, you've got to really, really be true to that purpose as well. Obviously, businesses grow, things change and evolve, but if you feel that something happens to your business that doesn't really support the purpose behind it, then don't be afraid to kind of not go with it. Brands with clearly defined purpose attract like-minded people. And again, this is where social media comes into its own. If you clearly push the purpose of your brand through a well-executed social media strategy, suddenly you're going to have a ready-made audience following you that's going to make it much easier to market to, because they're all going to be like-minded people and people who believe in you, your business, your brand, and your purpose. Also, customers and consumers that share your purpose are more likely to become your brand advocates as well. So all great tribes march behind a common cause. So the more that you attract the people who believe in your purpose, the more they're going to share your content, your social media, talk about you, recommend you. So it's all kind of being quite niche and building it from there to give you the loudest voice. Culture. A brand that stands for something creates its own internal culture born out of authenticity. It helps maintain a consistent voice across all communication channels. Endurance is also a big thing behind brands with purpose, because brands with purpose will last. This happens even when products and services adapt, change will get replaced. The purpose is the consistent thread that binds, makes brands strong and last, and also gives the brand momentum. 66% of consumers say they are willing to pay more for goods from socially responsible companies. And the Havas Group's Meaningful Brands report from last year revealed that 81% of brands sold across Europe could disappear and consumers just would not care. So basically, this is why brands need purpose more than ever, just basically to give you that standout and that reason for people to buy and consider you even more. Purpose is basically all about building a vision, living it and breathing it. And this is where the passion comes in. I feel that the most successful brands are those ones with founders behind them that really obviously are living, breathing everything about that brand. But also, you could say that about PR as well, and what I've done with Wilderness PR. But I'm very, very conscious as well that my kind of new way of working in the industry, it's something that I'm obviously in control of. It's something I'm passionate about now, but also it gives me the balance that I need in life. My children are older now. They're ranging from age 7 to 13. And I do what I do now because I'm able to have a balance in life and be able to have time out when I need to. I don't need to be at my desk till 9 o'clock at night. You know, I'm lucky that I work for clients I absolutely adore working for. But it's about having a better balanced life now than obviously agency life that I was experiencing in the early parts of my career. I was actually invited back into agency this time last year, a bigger London agency, and I went back to work there for a whole month. And I was very shocked that, well, firstly, it was the first time I stepped into London agency for 13 years, but also it kind of reinforced what I had now with regards to my business, that actually, you know, nothing's really changed in the big corporate world. And I was shocked at how late people were still working, how exhausted people were. There was more mental health support, I noticed, actually, within these big corporations, which is fantastic. But for me, it was like, it kind of confirmed I could never go back to that way of working. And actually what I'm doing now with Wilderness PR is right for me, right for my life. And it doesn't need to involve sitting at a desk and doing a commute every single day. And actually, as a result of that, my working years now are much more successful than they were back into agency days. And that's defined not only by, finances, but happiness for me is the biggest kind of barometer for success. And for me, it's all about, being happy. And obviously I'm happy, my family's happy. It has a knock-on effect with those close around you. But I think for me, the mental health aspect and the positivity and the happiness is the biggest thing. That's got me to where I am now. And I think, if there's anybody here listening to this and they're thinking about setting up a new business, or maybe they've had doubts about what they've been doing, if I could just inspire one person just to have the confidence to do it, then, please do, because there's no right or wrong anymore. And I think if you can make that leap to do something that you absolutely love doing, then you will have no regrets, and it will be something that you will, be thankful for forever. Working from home obviously is quite a big thing now, and I've actually put together some content for Locate Sussex, who are issuing the piece, I think, on their social media and via their newsletter today. And I'm also going to put the link to the piece as well into my slides, which I'm going to send to Anna to send to everybody after the talk. But the working from home thing, I'm just going to touch on it. I'm not going to mention everything that I wrote for the piece because people can read it later. But basically, obviously these are changing times at the moment, and with another lockdown happening tomorrow, God forbid, it's really important that people's frame of mind is right for working from home. There's lots of things that people can do to help their working from home environment support this kind of better frame of mind. Obviously, it's really difficult, and I think there's lots of studies coming through now that are revealing the biggest issue with working from home is loneliness. And obviously, some people work from home because they freelance and they don't have a team, but there are people who work from home and they've got a team but who are also working from home. So I think the most important thing for me is, still pick up that phone and use different channels and different ways of communicating. So use video conferencing, use telephone calls. Also, we're all sitting at our desks too much. I think people are also working more, actually working from home. So when you're on the phone, if no one can see you, walk around, don't be static the whole time sitting in a chair. I also think that working from home, people are productive at different times of the day. And I think it's really good for teams to communicate that. And also, understand that some people do have children as well. And, they've got school pickups. They might have young children still at home. So if everyone's able to kind of respect that, then that helps with the whole kind of mental health aspect of working from home. The biggest issue that I have actually working from home is when to finish work. So if you have a daily routine where you can maybe finish at a certain point of the day where you celebrate that by going for a walk, just to define that working day to your evening within obviously the same four walls, and that's obviously a brilliant thing to do. And also I've totally learned to turn all my tech off, so no laptop, don't respond to any emails at night, because people then think that you're there 24/7. I also have different spaces as well, so I have my workspace. If you don't have a separate office, then have an area in a room that you only enter when it's for working hours, and make that really kind of defined as well. That will help kind of distinguish your working hours from your non-working hours. Also, I've kind of learned over the years that my most productive time of the day is actually really early in the morning. When I thought I still had to kind of work the late hours, and sometimes obviously I have to, because I've still got a service to provide to clients, rather than working late in the evening, I now then go to bed and wake up really early in the morning, and I'm literally twice as productive as a result. That's taken a few years to work that out, and I call it the 6 a.m. club. But actually, through social media, that I realise a lot of people actually do that, and it's very common with mums as well, because obviously you can get up, do a couple of hours work before the kids hopefully wake up or need to go to school. So just don't be ashamed to adapt your kind of working to accommodate the fact that you are at home, and it's it is different, and everybody's got a different way of doing it as well. And I don't think there's any set way. You've just got to kind of find it and work it out yourself, really. I hope that's okay. I think it's just basically, I'm not a life coach, I'm not anything really, but what I've done is I've stuck with my career, but I've changed it to accommodate me and my life. And I think more and more people are doing this, and through social media you learn of this, and obviously gives you the confidence that you can do this however way you want to. And I think I'm gonna name check some podcasts actually, because I'm one of these multitaskers where if I have to do something like housework, I will listen to a podcast, because obviously it makes it a lot more interesting. But also for me, it's about learning, on the go. I've been listening to Holly Tucker's Conversation of Inspiration since she launched the podcast probably 2 years ago. Holly Tucker is a former founder of notonthehighstreet.com, or she is the founder of notonthehighstreet.com. But her podcast I found extremely inspirational. She interviews different business founders about their business journey. And actually, what I've learned from there is most people who have launched their brand or business have done so because of a life experience, whether that be a breakdown, or a close member of their family dying, but it's all shaped their success. And I think it's really important to define success. Like I said, success for me isn't about the finances so much, it's about the happiness and the fulfillment that you get from life through your work. Another great podcast I'd like to recommend is one called Small and Mighty by Sam Burgess. Again, she interviews different business founders. Sam is a marketing mentor and she's also a business coach. But again, listening to all of these just kind of makes you feel empowered. Also, they're great for generating ideas that you could obviously apply to your business to help, drive that forward. So I would love to hear actually if anybody listening listens to other podcasts, whether they're business podcasts or lifestyle podcasts, anything. I just think the more we can share and recommend podcasts, the better, because it's not something you often read about. So if anyone's got any, then please can you put them in the chat? That'd be great to hear. I think that's it from me. I hope I didn't bore anyone too much. But I think it's really important to be honest, and you learn a lot from other people actually just from listening to this type of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's it really. So
thank you so much, Sarah. That was fantastic to hear what you were saying at the beginning as well. It was, for me, very much normal, the way of being brought up to deal with issues and just get on with it, not to talk to people. So sometimes it can be challenging for people to get out of that kind of way of growing up and then being able to openly talk to people. So there may still be a generation of people that are not open and willing to talk. Also, what you were saying about your business and having that sense of purpose and that clear message and having that passion, which ultimately brings that happiness and that fulfillment. I think that is really key into running any business, but how that can lead to happiness and fulfillment and enjoyment in what you do. And whatever we communicate, whatever messages and how we communicate, making sure that they are authentic and we are transparent and genuine, that all helps with the message of our brand, of our companies. But ultimately, it's going back to having that healthier work environment, that happiness, and so yeah, absolutely amazing. The you mentioned I've got a couple of questions in the chat, but I'd like to ask you both these, and I think you've touched on it already a little bit. Sarah, I'll come to you first about the home working. Do you feel that home working is helping support a better work-life balance, or is it going to create a new level of stress and isolation? So I'll ask that first to you, and then I'll go to Paul.
I think it really depends on the type of person that you are. And I've only learned from working from home now for 5 years to walk away from my desk if I'm not being productive. And also if I feel that I need to go out for a walk for mental health reasons. It's interesting because I think the studies are just coming out now on the working from home environment. And actually, I've got a stat here, which is actually in the piece that I've written for Locate. But it was a survey that was done by the Office Group, and the survey revealed that over half of the respondents said that they had been working outside their contractual hours since lockdown, with the average UK worker putting an extra 59 hours over 5 months, which is the equivalent of about 7 days' work. So actually, if you look at it like that, Anna, yeah, I mean, I can't see how that's not going to cause mental health and issues for people, because people are working more, and I'm sure there's obviously a fear for a lot of people about their jobs and about whether their jobs are on the line. So automatically, it's only human nature, isn't it, to then kind of overwork. There's people being furloughed, so other people have had to kind of take on extra hours because of that. For me, I think it's still early days, but I think we will know in a few more months what that impact's going to have on people, if it isn't already happening. And I think it's up to the responsibility of the employer to ensure that their staff welfare is looked after as much with people working from home as if they were in an office together. And I know there's lots of tools and there's lots of things being done by companies that are helping with this. But I think we're kind of learning still, aren't we?
Thank you. I'll come to you with the same question, Paul, about how you feel home working is helping support a better work-life balance, or is it creating a new level of stress and isolation?
Well, I think the positive side of lockdown has been the opportunity for people to actually try home working. And I mean, I've known organisations that don't trust their employees to work from home, and the stigma attached to that. And and of course they've been forced into the opportunity of actually observing how productive people can be, and I think they've been surprised, pleasantly surprised by that. So that's the real positive of, if there are such things, of lockdown. But the downside is the loneliness. I'm a people person. I like being around people, and I bounce off. I react rather than, I'm not that productive when it comes to being on my own, and I can find distractions all the time. And so from my point of view, I've struggled a little bit, but it's given me, but I'm also in a fortunate position. I've retired, I get a pension. I haven't got the same pressures that other people have got. And I haven't, as a business owner, I've probably not been as productive to actually sell my business, because there's an indecency almost about making money out of someone else's mental health. So I've gone down that supportive route, which I really need to get that mindset out. I need to get that mindset out of my head, really, and be more proactive. So there's a balance, and my balance is I avoid work, I get distracted, but it has been a great opportunity for other people to see how it works. My daughter, funny enough, was working in PR at the start of lockdown, and she worked for a great organisation, but she realised that it wasn't the world she wanted to stay in during lockdown, and working from home brought that home to her. So she was working with some fabulous people, and she was enjoying going into the workplace. But when she had the work, she realised that maybe this is not what she wanted, and so she did a psychology degree, so she's now a special needs learning assistant in a primary school, which is a lot less money, but she's now following the career path that she wanted to take. So it's given her an opportunity to review something that probably wouldn't have happened, because she was really enjoying being with the people that she was working with, but the role itself didn't turn out to be what she wanted, So it's been an interesting time. There's pros and cons.
I think, like you said, Paul, it's not, home working won't suit everybody. So we've seen, in terms of whether it's our own staff or through other businesses, that some enjoy that working from home. They've had that opportunity to see their families a lot more, spend more time with their families and be in that home environment. Whereas others, they've seen how it can lead to further issues being around the family all the time. And also we've seen from those that are on their own and don't have any family, at home, they wanted to come back to work. I had 3 members of staff that wanted to come back into the office place. We've made it COVID safe, as safe as possible, and put measures in place. But they wanted to be back because of that social interaction, that face-to-face communication. So we've seen 2 extremes, and I think that's what will happen. You see people reassessing their life and benefiting from that home working life, and others that really prefer that physical face-to-face interaction and being in an office environment.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, sorry.
I feel sorry for the younger generation, actually, maybe people who've just graduated and gone into the workplace, because I feel, there's lots of younger employees that are missing out on training, and also just what working in an office brings you with regards to office etiquette and stuff that you learn, whether that's intentionally or subliminally by working with a team in an office. And I feel for people who aren't getting that type of interaction at the moment. And I'm sure, Anna, you've got some examples of that too, where you've seen that happen.
Yeah, we've seen that. I do have another question in terms of how do you structure your day to reach work-life balance, being a mum and a professional, Sarah? And how do you find time for yourself with your kids and your business? Because, some people do struggle with that.
It's a roller coaster, and I must admit, like a lot of maybe people watching right now who've got children, when we had the initial lockdown earlier on in the year, my husband also runs his business from home, and it was really difficult. Obviously homeschooling 3 children and running a business, but this isn't happening this time round, which obviously I'm sure a lot of people are grateful for. It's my day's different, and I feel I'm led by my heart, actually, which is definitely another transition that's happened in my life. I'm not led by my head so much, and I don't have a structure. I do what I do because I feel it's the right thing to do at that moment in time. But also, as people know, when you're a mum, every day is completely different, and what the kids throw at you can't determine sometimes. I've learned not to beat myself up about it. I'm so lucky that I've got amazing clients who totally understand that I have 3 young children. And as long as I do the work on time, they don't care whether I'm doing it at 1 o'clock in the morning or at 4 o'clock in the morning or within the 9 to 5 working hours. And I've always been quite clear about that with my clients, because that takes the pressure off me. And I think in this day and age, this transparency with how everybody works, the understanding that everybody has different ways of working, is helping this process happen. And it's. I mean, obviously, I've been running my business from home for years, but in a way, I feel it's lovely now that people are doing this more and more because of what's happening with COVID. But I'm a 6 o'clock, 5 a.m.er, and what I can smash out on a laptop in those early hours after sleep, if I have to free up the hours to be with the kids, is what I do rather than work late at night. I've learned just by looking. If I'm too tired, I'm staring at a screen, I walk away, whatever time of day that is, because there's no point just sitting at a desk being, not very productive. I'm also lucky that I've got a dog, so he's a brilliant excuse to get me away from a desk. If I'm not feeling it, I never try and force that work to happen. If it's not going to happen, I just walk away and I take the dog out for a walk. I go out and get some fresh air. I also exercise quite a lot. For me, that helps with my mental health, and actually that is my me time. Saying that though, I still have children rock up and find me wherever I am, but I think you just learn to deal with it and don't put yourself under any pressure. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a job, isn't it? And happiness and your family well-being is up there, way above anything else. But what is lovely, I've got 3 girls, and they've always known me as a working mum, and hopefully that will shape their attitudes towards their careers when they're older. much more so than, when I was their age. My mum started working after, when we were older and we were teenagers. But obviously her work really defined her as a person, like it does me. And I think it's really important that your kids understand that, because it's a good thing to teach kids. And they all have little Chromebooks now for school, so they think they're like mummy now when they go and get their laptop up. And sometimes we can all be working together, and it's really sweet. But I think enjoying it, it's all about balance, it's all about happiness, it's all about enjoying what you do, and working to live and not living to work.
Definitely. And what you were saying about the exercise as well, that work, that health, being health and healthy and fit. I think that a lot more people have taken to going for walks, and there's been an increase in purchases as well of bikes, and people purchasing dogs as well and getting a pet. But I think that all helps encourage that being outdoors, and that balancing that work-life balance and healthy well-being as well. So I think it is important that we continue to do that. And we continue to go outside, get fresh air. I think also with this environment, I don't know why none of us actually thought of it before, with the virtual environment, with Zoom and Teams, that we can all interact and have meetings like this, because it was all forced upon us when we came into the first lockdown in March. Nobody thought about it. We were all having face-to-face meetings, and many of us, should I say, 95% were having face-to-face meetings or face-to-face networking events and everything. But this has allowed me to analyse our business moving forward, that there is we can balance it and have both when we're able to interact again and have those face-to-face events. But I think it is all about that balance, and what suits some people may not suit others. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you both for sharing your stories, and they've been really inspirational for me, and I'm sure for everybody else. I have I can't see any more hands up or any more questions, but I have got another podcast that's been shared, which is from, I'm not sure if this is the correct pronunciation, but Brené Brown.
Brené Brown, yeah.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about the importance of being vulnerable, honest, and to speak up in order to embody our true power. So that's another one that you can have a look at as well, Sarah.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. She's my wife is she's a retired police officer as well. But she went up through the ranks and things like that, and she's now a business coach. But someone like Brené Brown has been one of her inspirations, and she's got a whole bookcase full of, I call them self-help books and things like that, but they're a great source of inspiration, and along with the podcast, and she keeps lending these things out and then never getting them back. But Brené Brown is one of those ones she keeps coming back to, so it is good. But and with the, I mean, I'm looking out of my window. I'm back onto the Downs. I'm really lucky in Eastbourne, and I'm going out with the dog in about, as soon as this ends, we're going up on the hill, and it is really important to have that time out, and that's one of the benefits of working from home. You can do it, and then you can work later, and it's a choice thing. But it's but going back to that whole thing about it's not right for some people, and when you think about things like domestic violence and the pressure that people can come under because of the pressures of a home life, and so there's a lot of that that's become submerged beneath the surface, which will have a knock-on effect later on. So we're in a time where for every good side there's a bad side, and it's just, we've just got to get through this and be able to support each other. So thanks for having me today.
That is definitely the same for some very vulnerable young children.
Yes,
making sure that they're able to carry on going to school and having that support that they need. So there are issues either way, and we need to make sure that that's being addressed and looked after, definitely. But thank you so much for your inspirational stories, for being so honest. I commend you both for sharing your life stories and what you've been through, and the benefits and the pros and cons of mental health impact on working from home, and how We just need to make sure we are looking after ourselves. We are talking to people. We are opening up where possible, and because that can really help people overcome certain situations. So thank you so much. And thank you very much to our attendees for joining us today. We will share the presentation and all the slides with everyone. Thank you so much.